The rain hammered against the bus windows as Marina Steele watched the urban landscape gradually transform. The low-rise buildings of the outskirts gave way to the mirrored skyscrapers of downtown New York City, a concrete jungle that intimidated her as much as it fascinated her. At 24, she carried a battered backpack on her back, and in her heart, the determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. The orphanage in Rochester had been left behind just 3 days ago, along with the only life she had ever known. 16 years within those yellowed walls, 16 years of being. Just another number, another mouth to feed. When she turned 18, she was sent away with an ID card, $200 in her pocket, and the vague promise that she would figure it out. And she did, working at anything that came along, saving cent by cent until she could afford the ticket to the capital. Marina Steele clutched the crumpled paper in her coat pocket, the address of a rented room in a boarding house in Chinatown that she had found online. The rent would consume almost all the money she had, but it was all she could afford, at least for now. The bus stopped at a subway station and she got off, immediately swallowed by the crowd. The noise was deafening, voices, horns, the roar of trains arriving and departing. People passed her as if she were invisible, pushing, stumbling, always in a hurry to get somewhere important. Marina Steele felt like a leaf being carried away by the current. She checked the map on her phone and descended the subway stairs. The station was packed, the air thick with sweat and anxiety. She was walking along the platform when she felt a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Hey there, pretty lady. Lost?" Marina Steele turned and found a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard and alcohol on his breath. His smile didn't reach his small, dark eyes. She took a step back, but he advanced. "No need to be scared. I just want to help. You're not from around here, are you? I can show you the city." Marina Steele's heart pounded. She looked around, but everyone seemed too busy to notice her distress. The man reached out his hand towards her face, and she recoiled violently. "Leave me alone," she shouted, but her voice was lost in the station's noise. He chuckled, an unpleasant sound that made her tremble. "Relax, princess. I won't do anything you don't want." Marina Steele turned and ran. She ran like she had never run in her life, taking the stairs 2 steps at a time, pushing people, dropping her backpack along the way. She only stopped when she reached the street, breathless and with tears in her eyes. She looked back and saw that the man hadn't followed her, but the terror still pulsed in her veins. She walked aimlessly through the lit streets, trying to calm down. The city at night had a different air, more welcoming in a way. The lights of signs and shop windows created an almost magical atmosphere, masking the harshness of the concrete. That's when she saw the cafe on the corner, its golden windows emanating warmth and the aroma of sweet bread. She entered without thinking, just seeking refuge. The atmosphere was cozy, with dark wooden tables and decor reminiscent of European cafes. There were few customers at that hour, a couple talking softly in a corner, a woman reading a book, a few young people with open laptops. Marina Steele walked to the counter, still trembling. There was a tall man with his back to her, dark hair slicked back, wearing a suit that even she, a novice in fashion, recognized as expensive. When he turned slightly to get his drink, she could see his striking profile, a square jaw, a straight nose, a posture that exuded confidence. Without thinking, still in shock from what had happened in the subway, Marina Steele approached him as if he were a lifeline in the open sea. "Darling, I'm so glad you arrived," she said, grabbing his arm. "I thought you weren't coming anymore." The man turned completely, and Marina Steele found herself facing a pair of blue-gray eyes that studied her with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. He was younger than she had imagined, perhaps in his early 30s, and incredibly handsome in a way that made her momentarily forget where she was. For a few seconds that felt like an eternity. They looked at each other in silence. Marina Steele could feel her face burning with embarrassment as she realized the mistake she had made. This man was a complete stranger, and she had called him darling as if they were intimate. "Sorry," she murmured, letting go of his arm. I got confused." But instead of irritation or discomfort, she saw a slow smile form on his lips. It was an intrigued, almost amused smile, as if she had done something unexpectedly interesting. "It's all right, it happens," he said, and his voice was deep, with a slight accent she couldn't identify. "Are you okay? You look scared." The unexpected kindness almost made her cry again. I'm fine. Just a difficult day." He nodded, as if he perfectly understood what it meant to have difficult days. "May I buy your coffee? As a form of compensation for not being who you expected?" Marina Steele shook her head quickly. "No need. I was the one who got confused. I'm really sorry for the embarrassment." There was no embarrassment at all, he said, and there was something in his tone that made her believe him. "It's been a while since someone called me darling." There was a subtle melancholy in that statement that touched something deep in Marina Steele. She looked at him again, noticing the way his shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight, despite his confident posture. "So will you accept the coffee?" he insisted. "No strings attached, no ulterior motives, just kindness." Marina Steele hesitated. All the warnings she had received in life about not trusting strangers echoed in her mind, but there was something about this man that reassured her. Perhaps it was the respectful way he kept his distance, or the sincerity she perceived in his eyes. "All right," she said finally. "Just a coffee." They sat at a table near the window. He ordered a double espresso, she chose a cappuccino. For a few minutes they remained in comfortable silence, watching the street activity outside. "First time in New York City?" he asked, noticing how she observed everything with curious eyes. "Is it that obvious?" "You look at the city like someone who is still discovering it. It's beautiful to see." Marina Steele felt her face flush again. "I arrived today. I came from upstate." "For work?" "Hope, I'd say." She took a sip of her cappuccino, savoring the creamy taste. "I got an internship position at a tech company. Nothing too important, but it's a start." "Every start is important," he said, and there was a conviction in his voice. That made her look at him again. "Which company?" "Technova Solutions, do you know it?" Something changed in his expression. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Marina Steele caught it. A slight tensing of the muscles around his eyes, an almost insignificant pause before he replied. "Yes, I know it. It's a good company." "Do you work in tech, too?" "Something like that," he said, looking away towards the window. "And you? What did you do upstate?" Marina Steele hesitated. She didn't like talking about the orphanage, about the years of rejection and abandonment, but there was something in his presence that made her want to be honest. "I grew up in an orphanage. I worked various jobs when I left there. Retail, restaurant, small office. Nothing very exciting." He looked at her again, and Marina Steele saw something she hadn't expected in his eyes. Understanding. Not pity, not judgment, but an understanding that came from someone who knew difficulties. "That takes a lot of courage," he said simply. "Or desperation," Marina Steele replied with a sad smile. "Courage and desperation sometimes go hand in hand." They talked for another hour, touching on superficial topics, movies, books, the differences between life upstate and in the city. He was intelligent and well-spoken, but Marina Steele noticed that he avoided talking much about himself. There were layers to this man, secrets hidden behind polite answers. When she looked at her watch and realized it was already past 10 at night, she quickly stood up. "I need to go. I have to find the boarding house where I'm staying, and I start work early tomorrow." "Of course." He stood up too, always a gentleman. "It was a pleasure talking to you." "Marina," she said, extending her hand. "Marina Steele." He took her hand, and Marina Steele felt an electric current pass through their touch. His fingers were warm, firm, and remained intertwined for a second longer than was appropriate. "Raphael," he said, "Raphael Sterling. Thank you for the coffee, Raphael. And sorry again for the misunderstanding." "You're welcome, Marina, and don't apologize. It was refreshing." She left the cafe with a smile on her lips, for the first time since arriving in New York City, feeling that perhaps the city wasn't as hostile as it seemed. She had no idea that this casual encounter would change her life forever. The next morning, Marina Steele woke up early at the boarding house. The room was small and simple but clean. She had slept poorly, partly due to the anxiety of her first day of work, partly because she couldn't stop thinking about her encounter with Raphael. There was something about him that intrigued her, a depth she would like to explore. She put on her best outfit, black pants and a white shirt she had bought especially for the occasion, and took 2 buses to reach the Technova Solutions building. It was a 20-story glass tower in the heart of the city, imposing and modern. Marina Steele looked up, trying not to feel intimidated. The reception area was all white marble and glass, with black leather armchairs and minimalist decor. The perfectly groomed blonde receptionist greeted her with a professional smile. "Marina Steele, new intern in the finance department," she announced, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Ah, yes, you're on the list. 15th floor. Ask for Clara at the department reception. She'll guide you." In the elevator, Marina Steele took a deep breath. It was a new beginning, a new chance. She couldn't waste it. The 15th floor was a labyrinth of desks, computers, and people talking on the phone. The atmosphere was one of intense productivity, but Marina Steele noticed a subtle tension in the air. People spoke in lower tones. There was a controlled urgency in their movements. Clara, the department secretary, was a middle-aged woman with a warm smile that immediately put Marina Steele at ease. "Welcome to Technova. I hope you're ready, because this week is going to be intense. We have a big change happening in the company." "Change?" "New CEO. He arrived from Europe last week and is restructuring everything. Everyone is nervous, but he seems to know what he's doing. Come, I'll show you your desk and introduce you to the team." Marina Steele spent the morning being introduced to colleagues, receiving access passwords, and learning about the company's systems. Everyone was friendly, but she sensed the tension Clara had mentioned. There were murmurs about layoffs, department changes, new organizational structure. "Is the new boss strict?" she asked Luke, a data analyst who seemed closest to her age. "They say so. No one has seen much of him yet, only the directors, but his reputation from Europe is that of someone who isn't afraid to make deep cuts." During lunch, Marina Steele went down to the ground floor to eat a sandwich at the building's cafe. She was on her way back when she saw unusual activity in the lobby. Several people in suits were heading to the elevators speaking in English. It must have been an important meeting. Back on her floor, the tension had increased. Clara came to her desk with a worried expression. "Marina, I need you to organize these documents urgently. The new CEO will give a presentation to all employees at 4 o'clock. This afternoon in the main auditorium. Everyone must attend." Marina Steele took the papers and began to work, but her mind was anxious. It would be her first time seeing the new boss, the man who had the power to change everyone's destiny there. At 4 o'clock sharp, Marina Steele went down to the auditorium along with dozens of other employees. The room was packed, a nervous buzz filling the space. She found a seat in the middle of the auditorium with a good view of the stage. The lights dimmed and a voice announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, the new CEO of the Technova Solutions Group, Mr. Raphael Sterling Beaumont." Marina Steele's heart stopped beating for a second. It couldn't be. It wasn't possible. But when the stage lights came on and she saw the familiar figure stepping up to the podium, she knew she wasn't dreaming. Raphael, the same Raphael who had had coffee with her the night before, who had been kind and mysterious, who had made her heart race with a simple touch of his hand, was the new CEO of the company where she worked. He was impeccably dressed in a dark grey suit, hair perfectly slicked back, a commanding posture. When his eyes swept the auditorium and met hers, Marina Steele saw a flash of recognition, followed by something she couldn't decipher. "Good afternoon," Raphael said into the microphone, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "I know my arrival has caused some expectation. I am here to be transparent about my plans for this company." Marina Steele could barely concentrate on his words. Her mind was in a whirlwind, trying to process the impossibility of the situation. The man who had been kind to her, who had bought her coffee, who had made her heart pound, was the powerful CEO everyone spoke of with reverence and fear. Throughout the presentation, she felt his eyes return to her several times. They were brief, almost imperceptible glances, but she felt them like electric shocks. When the meeting ended and people began to leave, Marina Steele remained seated, still in shock. How could she have been so naive? How had she not noticed the signs? The expensive suit, the confident posture, the way he had hesitated when talking about Technova. "Marina?" She looked up and saw Luke standing beside her. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I'm fine. Just processing everything." "He's impressive, isn't he? Very young for a CEO, but they say he's a business genius. Traditional family, heir to a business empire. The kind of person who lives in a completely different world from ours." Marina Steele nodded vaguely, still trying to organize her thoughts. A world completely different from hers, indeed. And she had called that man darling, as if they were intimate. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Marina Steele tried to concentrate on work, but her mind constantly returned to those blue-gray eyes and the intrigued smile he had given her the night before. As she was leaving the building at 6 in the evening, she heard her name being called. "Ms. Steele." She turned and felt her stomach churn. Raphael was standing near the elevators, alone, his hands in his jacket pockets. Even from a distance, she could feel the intensity of his gaze. "Mr. Beaumont," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "May we talk? In private?" Marina Steele looked around. There were still a few people leaving for the day, but no one was paying attention to them. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They entered the elevator in silence. Raphael pressed the button for the 20th floor, the executive floor. During the ascent, Marina Steele felt her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. His office was immense, with glass windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The decor was modern and sophisticated, but there was a coolness in the atmosphere that matched the image everyone had of the new CEO. "Please, have a seat," he said, indicating one of the armchairs in front of his desk. Marina Steele sat down, trying to maintain an upright posture despite her nerves. Raphael did not sit behind the desk as she expected, but in the armchair next to her. The proximity made her even more nervous. "I imagine it was a surprise," he said, his voice softer than it had been during the presentation. "You could say that. You must be thinking I lied to you last night." Marina Steele stared at him. "Did you lie?" "Not exactly. I avoided the truth, perhaps. When you said you were going to work here, well, I didn't know how to react. I was trying to have a normal night before officially taking over the position. And I ruined your normal night by calling you darling." To her surprise, Raphael smiled, the same intrigued smile from the night before. "On the contrary, you turned my normal night into something memorable." Marina Steele felt her face flush. There was something in the way he said those words that made her forget the difference in their positions. "Mr. Beaumont." "Raphael. At least when we're alone, continue to call me Raphael." "Raphael," she repeated, liking the way the name sounded on her lips. "Won't this cause problems? I mean, you're my boss, and You're new here, yes, and I intend to treat you with the same professionalism I treat all employees, but that doesn't mean I have to pretend we don't know each other." Marina Steele nodded, but her mind was confused. There was a tension in the air between them that had nothing to do with corporate hierarchy. "May I ask a question?" she said, gathering courage. "Of course." "Last night, when I talked about the orphanage, you seemed to understand, as if you knew what I was talking about." Raphael's expression closed slightly. "We all have our difficulties, Marina." It was an evasive answer, but she decided not to press, for now. "Well, I should go," she said, standing up. "I don't want anyone to think I'm getting special treatment." Raphael stood up too. "Marina?" "Yes?" "Last night was pleasant. It's been a while since I've had a genuine conversation with someone." There was a vulnerability in this admission that touched Marina Steele deeply. For a moment, she saw not the powerful CEO, but the man she had met at the cafe, complex, mysterious, carrying his own burdens. "It was pleasant for me too," she said sincerely. They looked at each other for a moment that extended beyond what was appropriate, and Marina Steele felt again that electric current she had felt when they touched. Something was happening between them, something that went beyond the coincidence of working for the same company. "Good night, Raphael." "Good night, Marina." She left the office with trembling legs and her mind in a whirl. She had no idea that in a few days she would discover that the connection between her and Raphael was much deeper and more complicated than either of them could imagine. The following weeks turned into a delicate dance between the professional and the personal. Marina Steele dove into her work with determination, resolved to prove she deserved to be there regardless of any connection with the CEO. Raphael, for his part, maintained an impeccably professional demeanor during office hours, but Marina Steele felt his gaze on her with a frequency that made her heart race. It was Luke who noticed first. During a Tuesday lunch, he leaned across the cafe table and whispered, "Have you noticed the boss looks at you differently?" Marina Steele almost choked on her sandwich. "What are you talking about?" "During meetings, when he passes by our floor, he always glances in your direction. And it's not just any boss's glance. You're imagining things." But Luke wasn't. Marina Steele had also noticed, and it made her simultaneously nervous and thrilled. There were moments when they crossed paths in the hallway and exchanged a formal "good morning," but Raphael's eyes lingered on her a second longer than was appropriate. There were occasions when she felt a presence behind her and turned to find him watching her work through the glass of the meeting room. The situation became complicated one Thursday afternoon when Clara came to Marina Steele's desk with a worried expression. "Marina, I need you to take these documents to Mr. Beaumont to sign. It's urgent, and I can't leave now because I'm expecting an important call." Marina Steele took the folder, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. She hadn't been alone with Raphael since that first conversation in his office 3 weeks prior. She went up to the 20th floor and knocked on the executive secretary's door, Miss Helen, an elegant 50-year-old woman who managed Raphael's schedule with military efficiency. "He's on a conference call with London," Helen said, "but he said to interrupt him when the audit documents arrived. You can go in." Marina Steele took a deep breath and opened the office door. Raphael was standing by the windows, speaking fluent English with someone on speakerphone. He gestured for her to enter and wait without interrupting the conversation. She stood near the door, trying not to pay attention to the conversation, but she couldn't help but admire the way he conducted the negotiation. There was a natural authority in his voice, a confidence that came not only from his position but from deep knowledge. It was easy to understand how he had become CEO so young. When he finally hung up and turned to her, Marina Steele again felt that sensation of being studied by eyes that saw more than they should. "The audit documents?" he asked, approaching. "Yes?" Marina Steele extended the folder, and when their fingers touched during the transfer, she felt that familiar electric current. Raphael didn't open the folder immediately. Instead, he observed her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "How are you adapting to the company?" he asked. "Well, I like the work, I like the team. And the city? Have you found a better place to live?" Marina Steele was surprised he remembered she was in a boarding house. "I'm still in the same boarding house. I'm saving up to get my own apartment." "Alone, I imagine it's hard to adapt to New York City." There was something in his voice that suggested he also knew the loneliness of a big city. Marina Steele wondered about his personal life, if there was someone waiting for him at home, if the CEO's life was as isolated as it seemed. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I'm used to fending for myself." "Yes, you mentioned you grew up in an orphanage." He moved a little closer, and Marina Steele could smell the discreet masculine perfume he wore. "It must have been difficult." "It was what it was. I don't like talking about it much." Raphael nodded as if he understood perfectly. "I'm sorry for asking. Sometimes people ask questions about our childhood as if it's casual conversation, isn't it? As if they don't know that some stories are too complicated to be told easily." There was a subtle pain in those words that made Marina Steele look at him more intently. "Do you also have a complicated story?" "We all do, in one way or another." He opened the folder and began to leaf through the documents, but Marina Steele realized it was more to avoid her gaze than to actually read. "Marina." "Yes?" "Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Nothing work-related, just talk, like normal people." Marina Steele's heart pounded. She knew she should say no, that mixing personal and professional life was dangerous, especially considering the hierarchical difference between them. But there was something in the way he had extended the invitation, almost hesitant as if expecting a refusal, that touched her. I don't know if that's a good idea." I understand, he said quickly. It's complicated, considering our situation here. Forget I asked. No. The word came out before she could think. Don't forget, I would like to have dinner with you, just... Where? How? A slow smile formed on Raphael's face, the same smile that had intrigued her at the cafe that first night. I know a discreet place. Italian. Quiet. Can I pick you up at 8? Marina Steele nodded, still not believing what she had agreed. Sue's all right. She left the office with shaky legs, wondering what had just happened. Luke was waiting for her when she returned to the 15th floor. By the look on your face, either you got fired or something interesting happened, he said with a mischievous smile. It was nothing, just delivered some documents. But Marina Steele spent the rest of the day distracted, thinking about dinner, what to wear, what would they talk about, and most importantly, what did it mean? The next morning she woke up early for a doctor's appointment she had scheduled weeks ago. It was a routine checkup required by the company for all new employees, but it had been postponed due to scheduling issues at the lab. The private hospital was luxurious, very different from the public clinics where she had always been treated. The receptionist was polite and efficient, and Marina Steele was quickly directed to blood tests and other procedures. Is this for Technova's corporate health plan? The technician asked as she drew blood. Yes. Great. They have a special, more comprehensive protocol. I've included some genetic tests as a precaution. It's company policy for positions that handle sensitive information. Marina Steele didn't think much of it. She spent the day at work trying to concentrate, but her mind constantly returned to dinner. In the afternoon, she left early to get ready, returning to the boarding house nervous and excited. She chose a simple but elegant navy blue dress, the only one she owned that would be appropriate for a fancy dinner. She applied light makeup and let her hair down, which she usually tied in a bun for work. Raphael arrived promptly at 8, driving a black BMW. When she stepped out of the boarding house and saw him waiting for her, she again felt that tightness in her stomach. He looked devastatingly handsome in a white shirt and dark pants, no tie, more casual than she had seen him before. You look beautiful, he said, when she got into the car, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. Thank you, you look good too, he chuckled, a genuine sound she realized was rare. Good? That was diplomatic. The restaurant was exactly as he had described, discreet, elegant, with dim lighting and an intimate atmosphere. They were led to a table in a reserved corner away from other customers. During dinner they talked about everything and nothing. Raphael spoke of his travels in Europe, of different cultures and languages he had learned. Marina Steele spoke of her favorite books, of her dreams for the future. It was surprising how easy it was to talk to him when they weren't in the corporate environment. May I ask a personal question? Marina Steele said during dessert. Of course. Why did you come back to the United States? I mean, you seemed well established in Europe. Raphael's expression became more serious. Family responsibilities. My father died a few months ago, and I inherited the businesses. It wasn't exactly what I had planned for my life. Were you close? Raphael took a moment to reply, swirling the wine in his glass. No. He was a difficult man, controlling, manipulative. He dedicated his life to building an empire, but he forgot to build relationships. When I found out he was ill, I tried to get closer, but some wounds are too deep. Marina Steele felt a wave of compassion for him. It must be hard to take over something you didn't want. It is, but it's also an opportunity to do things differently, to change the way his companies operated. My father didn't care much for the people who worked for him. I want to change that. Is that why you're restructuring Technova? Partly. Also because I discovered some irregularities in the accounts. My father left many things unresolved. There was a bitterness in his voice that made Marina Steele want to comfort him. She reached across the table and lightly touched his hand. You're not your father, Raphael. He looked at her hand on his, then at her eyes. How can you be so sure? Because you bought coffee for a scared stranger. Because you treat your employees with respect. Because you're here having dinner with me. instead of at some social event with people from your circle. Raphael turned his palm upwards, intertwining his fingers with hers. And you? What do you want for your future? Stability, I guess, a normal life. Maybe a family someday if I find someone who accepts me as I am. Why wouldn't they accept you? Marina Steele shrugged. I have no family, no money, no connections. It's not exactly what most men look for. Then they're idiots, Raphael said with an intensity that surprised her. You are intelligent, strong, beautiful. Any man would be lucky to have you. They looked at each other across the table, and Marina Steele felt something changing between them. It was no longer just attraction or curiosity. It was something deeper, more dangerous. Raphael's phone rang, breaking the moment. He looked at the screen and frowned. Excuse me, it's urgent. Hello? Marina Steele watched his expression change as he listened to whoever was on the other end of the line. His face became serious, then worried. Understood, yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at Marina Steele with an apologetic expression. I need to go. Emergency at the company. It's okay, I understand. They left the restaurant quickly. On the way back to the boarding house, Raphael was tense, clearly worried about whatever had happened. Marina, he said when they stopped in front of the boarding house, thank you for the night. It was special. For me too. They looked at each other for a moment, and Marina Steele wondered if he was going to kiss her. There was tension in the air, an energy that demanded resolution, but Raphael merely touched her face lightly with his fingers. Good night. Good night. Marina Steele entered the boarding house with her heart racing and her lips tingling where he had almost kissed her. The next day she arrived at work to find the office in an uproar. Clara intercepted her as soon as she stepped out of the elevator. Marina, good you're here. I need you to go to HR urgently. Something about your medical exams. With a knot in her stomach, Marina Steele went down to the Human Resources Department. Dr. Sylvia, head of the department, received her with a serious expression. Miss Steele, we received the results of your exams. There's something that needs to be discussed. Any health problems? Not exactly. It's about the genetic tests we routinely perform. They showed something unexpected. Marina Steele sat down, her heart pounding. What do you mean? Technova maintains a genetic database for security and corporate inheritance purposes. Your tests showed compatibility with DNA already catalogued in our system. I don't understand. Dr. Sylvia took a deep breath. Marina, you are the biological daughter of Alexander Sterling Beaumont, the deceased patriarch of the Sterling Group. This makes you the half-sister of the current CEO, Raphael Sterling Beaumont. Marina Steele's world collapsed. She felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. Half-sister. Raphael was her half-brother. That's impossible, she murmured. We ran 3 different tests to confirm. There's no doubt. Marina Steele thought of all the conversations they had had, the way she felt attracted to him, the dinner the night before, the moment they almost kissed. She felt nausea rising in her throat. You can't tell anyone, she said desperately. Please. Not yet. Marina, this is a serious matter. Mr. Raphael needs to know. Please, Marina Steele repeated, tears in her eyes. Give me some time. I'll tell him personally. I just need to process this first. Dr. Sylvia hesitated, then nodded. 48 hours. After that, it will be my duty to inform him officially. Marina Steele left HR staggering. How was it possible? How could fate be so cruel? She had found someone she was falling in love with, someone who seemed to understand her, and now she discovered he was her brother. She spent the rest of the day trying to work, but it was impossible to concentrate. Every time she saw Raphael passing by in the hallway or through the glass of the meeting room, she felt a mixture of desire and horror. When he appeared at her desk at the end of the day, Marina Steele almost fainted. May I speak with you? He said softly. She followed him to an empty meeting room, her legs trembling. Raphael closed the door and turned to her. About last night, he began, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made Marina Steele's heart ache. I couldn't stop thinking about you. I know it's complicated. I know there are professional risks, but Marina, there's something between us that I can't ignore. He approached her, and Marina Steele had to use all her willpower not to recoil. Raphael, I know you feel it too, he said, touching her face. I saw it in your eyes yesterday. I felt it when we touched. Marina Steele closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. How could she tell him? How could she destroy that moment, that possibility of happiness? Marina, why are you crying? She opened her eyes and saw the genuine concern on his face. He was her brother, her half-brother. The man she was falling in love with was her brother. I can't, she whispered. We can't. Why? If it's because of work. It's not work, Raphael. It's complicated. He held her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Then tell me, what's going on? Marina Steele stared at him, seeing not only the man she desired, but also familiar traits that now made painful sense. The shape of his eyes, the line of his jaw, small details her subconscious had noticed but hadn't been able to identify. I can't tell you now, she said finally, but you'll find out soon. And when you do, you'll understand why. We can't be together. Raphael frowned, clearly confused and frustrated. Marina, that doesn't make sense. I know, but please, trust me. Please. She left the meeting room, leaving Raphael with more questions than answers, knowing that in 48 hours, their lives would change forever. Marina Steele spent the next 48 hours in a state of constant agony. Every moment in the office was torture, knowing that Raphael was just a few feet away, completely oblivious to the bomb that was about to explode in their lives. She watched him through the glass of the meeting rooms, seeing him conduct business with his usual authority, and felt her heart break a little more with each glance. Luke noticed her change in mood immediately. You look like you've seen the end of the world, he said during lunch on Monday. Did something happen? Just personal matters, Marina Steele murmured, pushing the food around on her plate without appetite. Does it have to do with our beloved CEO? Marina Steele looked up sharply. Why do you ask that? Because he's also acting strange, more withdrawn than usual if that's possible, and because you two are avoiding looking at each other in a very obvious way. Before Marina Steele could answer, her phone vibrated with a message from Raphael. We need to talk. My office, 3 p.m. She looked at the clock. It was 12:40. In a few hours, everything would change. Luke, she said suddenly, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do you believe that sometimes fate is cruel? That some things simply aren't meant to happen, no matter how much we wish for them? Luke studied her with a worried expression. Marina, you're scaring me. What's going on? Nothing I can explain now, but thank you for being my friend. It means a lot to me. At 3 o'clock, Marina Steele went up to the 20th floor with trembling legs. Ms. Helen greeted her with a professional smile. He's waiting for you. You can go in. Marina Steele took a deep breath and opened the office door. Raphael was standing by the windows, hands behind his back, looking at the city below. When he heard the door close, he turned to her. Thank you for coming, he said, but there was a formal coolness in his voice that hadn't been there before. Raphael, I received a call from Dr. Sylvia an hour ago, he interrupted. She said there was something important to discuss about your medical exams. She also said you already knew the result. Marina Steele felt her stomach drop. Her time was up. Is it true? Raphael's voice was controlled, but she could see the storm in his eyes. The tests showed that we are related? Marina Steele nodded slowly, not trusting her voice. Half-siblings, he said, as if testing the words. Children of the same father. Raphael, I only found out on Friday. I wanted to tell you personally, but I didn't know how. Friday. He ran a hand through his hair, a look of horror forming on his face. My God, you knew on Friday and still went to dinner with me. I didn't know before dinner. I found out the next day when I went to HR. Raphael began to pace back and forth in the office, clearly trying to process the information. My father, he murmured. Of course it was my father. Did you know he had other children? I suspected. He was a womanizer. There were always rumors, whispers, but I never wanted to investigate. Raphael stopped and looked at her. How did you find out who your mother was? Marina Steele hesitated. It was a part of her story she had never told anyone. I didn't find out much. When I was old enough to ask questions at the orphanage, they just told me my mother was a young woman who died in childbirth. No family, no resources. The baby was left in the system. And there were no records of the father? None. But now it makes sense, doesn't it? Why wouldn't a young single mother have family to help? Probably because she was involved with a married, powerful man who couldn't take responsibility. Raphael sat down heavily in his chair, putting his face in his hands. My father destroyed many lives, evidently more than I imagined. Raphael? No. He lifted his head, and Marina Steele saw that his eyes were red. You understand what this means, don't you? Everything I felt, everything that happened between us. I know. I almost kissed you, he said, his voice full of horror. Last night I almost... But you didn't, Marina Steele said softly. And now we know why. They remained silent for a long moment, the weight of the revelation hanging between them. Marina Steele wanted to comfort him, wanted to touch his hand as she had done in the restaurant, but now she knew she couldn't. What do we do now? She asked finally. Raphael took a deep breath, composing himself. When he looked at her again, his expression had changed. The vulnerable man had been replaced by the controlled CEO. Now we deal with this professionally. You continue to work here. I continue to be your superior. There's no need for anyone else to know about our family connection. And personally? Personally, we maintain distance. What we felt, what we thought we felt, cannot continue. Marina Steele nodded, trying to ignore the pain his words caused. I understand. Marina. His voice softened slightly. I want you to know that, even with this whole situation, I don't regret meeting you. You are an extraordinary person. You too, she whispered. She left the office feeling empty inside. In the following days, she and Raphael maintained a respectful distance. He treated her with the same professional courtesy he extended to other employees. But there was a deliberate coolness in their interactions that hurt more than Marina Steele expected. It was during this difficult phase that something happened that would change everything again. Marina Steele was working late one Friday, taking advantage of the empty office to catch up on some reports, when her computer experienced an error. Trying to access a shared folder, she ended up being redirected to a different server, one that apparently should not have been accessible to interns. The screen showed a list of files with enigmatic names: Proj, Cayman, 2019, Offshore Structures, BSD Transfers. Curious and without thinking of the consequences, Marina Steele clicked on one of the files. What she saw chilled her to the bone. They were detailed spreadsheets showing transfers of millions of dollars to accounts in tax havens. Transactions that involved Technova subsidiaries, but which did not appear in the official reports. There were false contracts, inflated invoices, an elaborate money laundering scheme that had been operating for years. And at the center of it all was the name of Alexander Sterling Beaumont. Marina Steele leaned back, her heart pounding. That explained a lot. How Raphael's father had built his empire, why there had always been rumors about questionable methods, why Raphael had mentioned irregularities in the accounts. Without thinking, she began to make copies of the files. Something inside her, a sense of justice that had been forged in years of injustice, could not simply close her eyes to that discovery. That's when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Quickly, Marina Steele closed the files and pretended to be working on her reports. The footsteps approached, and she recognized the voice of Edward Miller, the financial director, a 50-year-old man who had always treated her with thinly veiled disdain. "Are you sure the files are secure?" he was saying to someone on the phone. Marina Steele ducked down, hiding behind her monitor. "No, he can't know yet. Raphael is too busy with the restructuring to investigate thoroughly, but if he finds out what the old man was doing—" There was a pause as Edward listened to the reply. "Of course it has to do with the inheritance. Do you think he'll want to keep his father's dirty business? He's too straight-laced for that. If he discovers the true extent of the schemes, he'll want to clean everything up. And if that happens, we're all screwed." Marina Steele held her breath, trying to hear more. "The good news is that most of the physical records were destroyed when the old man died. Only the digital ones remain, and those are protected on servers that only a few of us have access to." "Yes, exactly. As long as we keep this hidden, we can gradually transfer the remaining funds and close the operations without a trace." The footsteps began to move away, but Marina Steele could still hear the last words. The problem would be if an outsider found out. But who would be foolish enough to meddle with files they shouldn't? When she was sure Edward had left, Marina Steele breathed again. Her hands trembled as she tried to process what she had heard. Not only had she discovered evidence of financial crimes, but she had also overheard a conspiracy to hide them from Raphael. He didn't know. Raphael had no idea of the true extent of his father's crimes, nor that some employees were actively hiding evidence from him. Marina Steele looked at the computer, still displaying the innocent files she was working on. She knew she should forget what she had seen, pretend nothing had happened, but she also knew she couldn't. Raphael deserved to know the truth about what he had inherited, and despite everything that had happened between them, despite the pain and confusion, she still cared about him. The following Monday, Marina Steele arrived early at the office and went directly to the 20th floor. Miss Helen had not yet arrived, but Marina Steele knew that Raphael always arrived before 7. She knocked on the office door and entered when she heard his voice. "Marina?" He looked surprised to see her. "Did something happen?" "I need to show you something. It's about your father." Raphael's expression closed. "Marina, we've talked about keeping our distance. This has nothing to do with our relationship. It's about the company, about crimes." She told him about her accidental discovery, about the files she had found, and the conversation she had overheard. Raphael listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each word. "Did you make copies of the files?" Marina Steele nodded, pulling a flash drive from her pocket. "It's all here." Raphael took the flash drive and connected it to his computer. For the next 20 minutes, he examined the files in silence, occasionally making notes or zooming in on certain sections. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and sighed heavily. "Son of a bitch," he murmured. "Excuse my language, but my father was worse than I imagined. You didn't know any of this." "I suspected there were irregularities, but this—" He gestured to the screen. "This is an industrial-scale money laundering scheme, decades of illegal operations. And some employees are trying to hide it from you." Raphael nodded gravely. "Which means they probably plan to continue the operations, or at least clean up the evidence before I find out." "What are you going to do?" Raphael remained silent for a long moment, studying the spreadsheets. "When—" he finally spoke. His voice was determined. "The right thing. I'm going to expose everything, cooperate with the authorities, return the stolen money, no matter what it does to the company or the inheritance." Marina Steele felt a wave of admiration for him. "This will destroy you financially, won't it?" "Probably, but I can't live building my life on the blood and sweat of other people." He looked at her. "Marina, do you understand the danger you've put yourself in by discovering this?" "What do you mean?" "If Edward and the others find out you saw these files, and they'll do everything to silence you." A shiver ran down Marina Steele's spine. She hadn't thought of that. "What do I do?" "For now, pretend you don't know anything. Act normally. I'll start a discreet investigation, but I need time to gather more evidence before acting." Marina Steele nodded, but she could feel fear setting in. "Raphael?" "Yes?" "Even with everything, with our situation, do you still trust me?" Raphael looked at her for a long moment. "You could have used this information against me, against the company. You could have sold it to competitors or used it as blackmail. Instead, you came to tell me the truth, knowing it could destroy me." He paused. Yes, Marina, I trust you. Perhaps more than I trust anyone else. There was an intimacy in this admission that made Marina Steele's heart race, followed immediately by the familiar pain of knowing it couldn't mean anything. Thank you, she said softly. When Marina Steele left the office that morning, she had no idea that Edward Miller had arrived early and seen her enter Raphael's room. Nor did she know that security cameras had recorded her presence in the office the night before, precisely when the confidential files had been accessed. The storm was just beginning, and Marina Steele had placed herself right in the center of it. In the following days, she tried to act normally, but she could feel suspicious glances from Edward and some other executives. There was a tension in the air that hadn't existed before, conversations that stopped when she approached. It was Luke who warned her first. Marina, something is going on, he said softly during lunch on Wednesday. I heard Edward asking the IT staff about unauthorized access to the servers, and your name was mentioned. Marina Steele's blood ran cold. My name? Why? I don't know, but they're investigating something, and the way they were talking, it's not good. Marina Steele felt panic begin to set in. If they found out she had accessed the files, if they knew she knew about the money laundering schemes. She looked through the glass of the meeting room and saw Raphael on a conference call. She wanted to run to him, tell him about her suspicions, ask for protection. But she knew she couldn't compromise him, not when he was trying to gather evidence discreetly. That afternoon, as she was leaving work, Marina Steele noticed she was being followed. A man in a dark suit kept his distance, but she saw him through the reflection of the shop windows. Her heart pounded. Instead of going straight to the boarding house, Marina Steele entered a mall, using the multiple exits to try to shake him off. It worked, but the experience left her terrified. That night, alone in her small room, Marina Steele looked at her phone, desperately wanting to call Raphael. But she knew she couldn't. She was alone in this as she had been all her life, or at least that's what she thought until she received an unexpected call the next morning. Marina Steele, said an elegant female voice on the other end of the line. Yes? My name is Eleanor Sterling Beaumont. I am the widow of Alexander Sterling, Raphael's mother. I would very much like to speak with you. Marina Steele looked at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. Eleanor Sterling Beaumont, Raphael's mother, widow of the man who had abandoned her own mother. What could that woman want with her? I don't understand, Marina Steele murmured. How did you get my number? I have my resources, Eleanor said, and there was a note of urgency in her refined voice. Marina, I know you must be confused, but I urgently need to speak with you. It's about my late husband, about Raphael, and about the danger you are in. Danger? I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me this afternoon? I know a discreet cafe on the Upper East Side. Café Laurent on Madison Avenue, at 3 o'clock. Marina Steele hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to hang up, not to get further involved in this impossible situation, but the mention of danger frightened her. All right, she said finally, but how will I recognize you? You'll know I have a table reserved under the name Sterling. The call ended, leaving Marina Steele more confused than ever. Throughout the morning at work, she found herself looking at Raphael through the glass of the meeting room, wanting to tell him about the call, but unsure if she should. He seemed tense, more than usual, and Marina Steele wondered if he had also noticed something strange. At 2:30, she made an excuse about a doctor's appointment and left the office. Café Laurent was, exactly the kind of place where she would feel out of place, elegant, expensive, frequented by New York City's high society. The hostess led her to a table in the back, where a woman of approximately 50 was waiting for her. Eleanor Sterling Beaumont was exactly as Marina Steele had imagined a magnate's wife would be. Tall, elegant, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Marina Steele earned in a month. But there was something in her eyes, a deep sadness, a fragility that her expensive clothes couldn't hide. Marina, she said, standing up to greet her. Thank you for coming. I know this must be strange for you. A little, Marina Steele admitted, sitting down cautiously. Eleanor studied her for a moment, and Marina Steele felt as if she were being analyzed. Finally, The older woman smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "You have his eyes," she said softly. "Alexander's eyes, the same color, the same intensity. Raphael has my side of the family's eyes, but you are definitely his daughter." Marina Steele didn't know how to respond to that. It was surreal to be sitting there talking to the wife of the father she had never known. "Why did you want to see me?" she asked finally. Eleanor took a deep breath, as if preparing for something difficult. "Because I know who you are. I know what you discovered about my husband's business, and I know you are in danger because of it." "How do you know about—" "I have contacts in the company, people loyal to me, not to Alexander's corrupt cronies who are still there." Eleanor leaned across the table. "Marina, you've meddled with something very dangerous. Edward Miller and his associates won't hesitate to silence you if they deem it necessary." A shiver ran down Marina Steele's spine. "They can't just hurt me. This is the 21st century, not a mafia movie." Eleanor's laugh was bitter. "Darling, you can't imagine what these men are capable of. My husband didn't build his empire by being kind, and the men who helped him learned his lessons very well. Then why are you warning me? Why do you care about me?" Eleanor looked out the window for a moment, as if gathering courage. When she looked back at Marina Steele, her eyes were bright with tears. "Because I knew about you," she said softly. "I always knew." Marina Steele felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "What?" "Your mother's name was Carmen Steele. She was 22 when she met my husband. She worked as a receptionist at one of his smaller companies in Rochester." Eleanor paused, wiping a tear. "Alexander told me about her when he found out she was pregnant." "He told you?" Marina Steele couldn't believe what she was hearing. "It wasn't the first time. My marriage to Alexander was arranged by our families, a union of convenience that turned into mutual tolerance at best. He had his affairs I pretended not to know, but Carmen was different." "Different how?" "He was in love with her." Eleanor smiled sadly. For the first and only time in his life, Alexander Sterling Beaumont was genuinely in love, and that terrified me. Marina Steele leaned forward, absorbing every word. "He wanted to leave everything, the company, our marriage, our social standing, to be with her. But the families intervened. His father, my father, the partners. They exerted tremendous pressure. They threatened to destroy all the businesses, cut all resources. Alexander was too ambitious to give up everything. So he chose money over my mother. He chose power. And when Carmen died in childbirth," Eleanor closed her eyes, "I think a part of him died with her. He was never the same again." Marina Steele felt a mixture of anger and sadness. "What about me? Did he know I existed?" "He knew, and for years he wrestled with himself over what to do. Part of him wanted to bring you home, give you the family name. But I didn't let him." The confession dropped like a bomb between them. Marina Steele looked at Eleanor with shock and anger. "You didn't let him?" "I was young, jealous, scared. You represented everything I wasn't. My husband's true love, the passion he never felt for me. I couldn't bear to have you around, a constant reminder that I was just the convenient wife." Marina Steele stood up abruptly, anger boiling inside her. "So for years I stayed in orphanages, struggling, feeling rejected, when I could have had a family, a decent life." "Yes," Eleanor said simply, tears now flowing freely. "And there's no excuse for it, no forgiveness for what I did." Marina Steele wanted to leave, wanted to scream at that woman who had ruined her childhood out of pure selfishness, but something made her hesitate. "Why are you telling me this now?" Eleanor wiped her face with a tissue. "Because when Alexander died, I read his will. He left a letter for me explaining about you, about the remorse he carried all these years. He wanted me to find you, to try to remedy the mistake. And you didn't. Not immediately. I was still processing his death, dealing with my own feelings. But then Raphael came back from overseas, and I saw how he was suffering with his father's inheritance, with the weight of the dirty business, and I thought that maybe you could help him. Help him how? You are the only true family he has now. The only person who can understand what it's like to grow up in the shadow of Alexander Sterling. Marina Steele laughed bitterly. Mrs. Sterling, your son and I, our situation is complicated. Because you were attracted to each other before you knew you were siblings, Eleanor said calmly. Yes, I know about that too. Marina Steele's face burned with shame. How do you... I have observers in many places. And don't be ashamed. There was no way for you to know. What matters is that now you know, and now you can support each other in the right way. Marina Steele sat down again, her head spinning with all the revelations. I still don't understand why you're telling me all this. What do you gain? Eleanor sighed. Atonement, perhaps. A chance to correct some of the mistakes I made. And also... She hesitated. Also because I need your help. My help. To protect Raphael. The men who are trying to hide Alexander's crimes won't stop with just you. If Raphael continues investigating, if he exposes everything, they will want to get rid of him too. Marina Steele felt a chill run down her spine. They would hurt their own CEO? With the right excuse, yes. An accident, an explosion, a robbery gone wrong. There are many ways to make someone's death look like a coincidence. And you think I can protect him? I think you can protect each other. Together, you are stronger, and I can help. How? Eleanor opened her purse and took out a thick envelope. Enough money for you to disappear, for a while if necessary. And also, she pulled out a small key. A safe deposit box at a bank. Inside are copies of documents Alexander kept, evidence of the crimes, but also information that can be used against Edward and his associates. Marina Steele looked at the items without touching them. Why do you have this? Because Alexander trusted me more than he imagined. He kept his most dangerous secrets where he thought they would be safest. With me. And you never used it? For what? I had nothing to gain by exposing his crimes while he was alive. But now that he's dead, now that Raphael wants to clear the family name, now it makes sense. Marina Steele finally took the envelope and the key. What do you want me to do? For now, just be cautious. Edward and the others know you discovered something, but they don't know exactly what or with whom you shared it. That gives you a small advantage. What about Raphael? Tell him about our conversation, about what I told you. He needs to know he has allies, but he also needs to understand the true danger he's facing. Marina Steele nodded, putting the envelope and key in her bag. Marina, Eleanor said as she stood to leave, I know I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the years you lost. But if you give me a chance, I'd like to try to be the family I should have been from the beginning. Marina Steele looked at that woman who had shaped her destiny so cruelly, but who now seemed genuinely remorseful. Part of her wanted to reject her, wanted to make Eleanor suffer as she had suffered, but another part recognized the sincerity in her eyes. We'll see, she said finally. First, let's survive all this. Then we can think about family. When Marina Steele left the cafe, her mind was buzzing. So many revelations, so many changes in how she saw her own story. But one thing was clear, the danger was real, and she needed to talk to Raphael. Back at the office, however, Marina Steele realized something had changed. There was a different tension in the air, and Edward Miller was talking intensely with two men in suits she didn't recognize. When they saw her, the conversation abruptly stopped. Luke appeared beside her desk as soon as she sat down. Where have you been? He whispered. Edward has been asking for you all afternoon, and there are some strange guys asking questions about you in HR. Marina Steele's stomach churned. What kind of questions? About your background, your qualifications, if you had access to specific systems, and Marina... Luke nervously looked around before continuing. They mentioned security investigations. Marina Steele pretended to be working, but her mind was in a panic. She needed to talk to Raphael urgently, but how? She couldn't simply go up to his office without raising more suspicion. The answer came in the form of a message on the company's internal system. Raphael wanted to see her in his office in 15 minutes. When she arrived on the 20th floor, however, Marina Steele realized it wasn't just a casual meeting. There were two people waiting with Raphael, an older man in an impeccable suit and a younger woman who looked like a lawyer. "Marina, these are Dr. Robert Ferris, forensic auditor, and Dr. Anna Beatrice, our legal counsel. They are helping me investigate the irregularities you discovered." Marina Steele nodded, trying not to look nervous. "We need you to tell us exactly how you found the files," Dr. Ferris said. "Every detail can be important." Marina Steele told her version, omitting only the encounter with Eleanor. When she finished, the two professionals exchanged meaningful glances. "Miss Steele," Dr. Anna Beatrice said, "do you understand that if this evidence goes to the authorities, you will be a key witness in a federal case?" "I understand." "And do you also understand that this puts you in a potentially dangerous position?" Marina Steele nodded, but her heart was pounding. "That's why we're going to provide protection for you," Raphael said. "Starting tomorrow, you will have a security escort, and we are considering temporarily relocating you to a safe location. Is that necessary?" "Unfortunately, yes," Dr. Ferris said. "We've already had indications that certain people in the company are uncomfortable with your presence." As if invoked by their words, Ms. Helen appeared at the office door. "Mr. Raphael, I apologize for interrupting, but Mr. Miller is here. He says it's urgent." Raphael frowned. "About what?" "Something about security irregularities. He mentions evidence of unauthorized access to confidential systems." Marina Steele felt her blood run cold. Raphael looked at her, then at the consultants. "Ask him to wait 5 minutes," Raphael told his secretary. When she left, he turned to Marina Steele. "This is no coincidence." "What do we do?" Marina Steele asked. "You leave through the service stairwell right now," Raphael said quickly. "Anna, go with her. Robert, we'll stay here to deal with Edward." But before they could move, the door opened again. Edward entered without knocking, accompanied by the two men in suits Marina Steele had seen earlier. "Raphael, I apologize for the intrusion, but we have a serious security problem." His eyes fixed on Marina Steele. "Involving unauthorized access to confidential files." "Edward," Raphael said coldly, "this is a private meeting, which involves exactly the person we are investigating." Edward smiled, but there was no warmth in his expression. "Miss Steele, could you explain why you were seen accessing restricted servers on Friday night?" Marina Steele looked at Raphael, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "I was working, and there was a system error. I accidentally accessed files." "Accidentally?" Edward repeated the words as if they were a joke. "And you didn't think it necessary to report this accident immediately?" "I didn't think it was important." "You didn't think it was important to have access to confidential financial information?" One of the men in suits stepped forward. "Ms. Steele, I am Detective Smith from the Federal Police. I would like you to come with us to provide clarification." Marina Steele's world collapsed again. She looked at Raphael, who was clearly struggling not to intervene. She knew that if he revealed himself now, he would compromise the entire investigation. "All right," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'll go with you." But when she stood up, her purse fell to the floor, spilling its contents. The envelope Eleanor had given her was visible to everyone. Edward saw it immediately. "And this? Where did all this money come from?" Marina Steele knew she was lost. There was no explanation she could give without compromising Eleanor or revealing her true identity. It was then that Raphael stepped forward. "The money came from me," he said calmly. "It's a salary advance I approved for Ms. Steele." Edward looked at him suspiciously. "Since when do you approve advances personally?" "Since I'm the CEO of this company," Raphael replied with authority. "And now, if you're done with your unfounded accusations, I have work to do." But Marina Steele could see in Edward's eyes that he hadn't believed it, and when she left the office under escort, she knew the game had changed completely. The war had begun, and she was right in the middle of it. The federal police precinct was cold and intimidating, with long corridors and interrogation rooms that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Marina Steele spent 4 hours answering questions, repeating her story about accidentally accessing the files, holding firm to the version she had rehearsed mentally. Detective Smith was persistent, but Marina Steele realized he had no real evidence against her, only suspicions based on system access logs. Eventually, she was released on the condition that she remain available for further questioning. When she left the precinct, it was almost midnight. To her surprise, Raphael was waiting for her on the sidewalk, leaning against his car. "How did you know I was out?" she asked, approaching him. "I have contacts. Get in the car. It's not safe to talk here." During the drive, Raphael told her what had happened after she left the office. "Edward tried to get a court order to search your desk and personal belongings. I managed to block it for now, but he won't give up easily." "And the consultants?" "Dr. Ferris confirms that the evidence is sufficient for a criminal prosecution, but now that Edward knows we're investigating, he'll accelerate his plans to destroy the evidence or other extreme measures." Marina Steele told him about her meeting with Eleanor, about the revelations concerning her mother, and about the documents the widow had given her. Raphael remained silent for a long moment after she finished. "My mother has always been complicated," he said finally. "I never understood why my father, who could have any woman, remained trapped in a clearly unhappy marriage. Now it makes sense." "Are you angry with her?" "I am, but I also understand. She was young, insecure, protecting what she believed was hers. It doesn't justify what she did to you, but I understand." They drove in silence for a few minutes before Marina Steele realized they weren't heading towards the boarding house. "Where are we going?" "A safe place. An apartment I keep for situations like this. Edward and his associates know where you live." The apartment was small but comfortable, in a discreet building in the city center. Raphael had brought a suitcase with clothes and basic supplies. "You can stay here as many days as necessary," he said, showing her the rooms. "The building has security, and I'll arrange for additional protection." "Raphael," Marina Steele said, as he was ready to leave, "what if they come after you too?" "They will, but I have resources to protect myself. You don't." There was a tension in the air between them, a forced proximity due to the situation that made the emotional distance they needed to maintain even more painful. "Good night, Marina." "Good night." Over the next 3 days, Marina Steele remained hidden in the apartment, emerging only for quick meetings with Raphael and the consultants. Dr. Ferris had compiled a comprehensive dossier of the financial crimes, and Dr. Anna Beatrice was preparing the documentation to hand over to the competent authorities. It was during this seclusion that Marina Steele had time to examine in detail the documents Eleanor had given her. In addition to the financial evidence, there were personal letters, photographs, and documents that told the complete story of the relationship between Alexander and her mother. Through these papers, Marina Steele finally got to know the woman who had given her life. Carmen Steele was intelligent, passionate, a dreamer. Her letters to Alexander showed a deep and genuine love, but also a woman who knew that her relationship was impossible within the rules of the society they lived in. In one particularly touching letter, Carmen wrote, "I know our love is doomed from the start, my dear Alexander, but I prefer to live a true passion for a short time than to spend my whole life pretending feelings that don't exist." Marina Steele was reading this letter on Thursday morning when Raphael appeared at the apartment with a grave expression. "Something happened," he said without preamble. "Luke was attacked last night." Marina Steele's blood ran cold. "Attacked? How?" "Beaten by 2 men who were asking about you. He's in the hospital, but he'll be fine." Marina Steele sat down heavily on the sofa. "This is my fault. He has nothing to do with it." "It's not your fault. It's the fault of the criminals who are trying to cover up their crimes." Raphael sat beside her. "But this confirms that the situation has escalated. We can't wait any longer." "What do you mean?" "This afternoon we're going to hand over all the documentation to the federal police and the district attorney's office. We're going to expose everything publicly before they can do more damage." Marina Steele nodded, but her stomach was churning with anxiety. "And then? What happens to us?" Raphael looked at her, and Marina Steele saw something in his eyes that she hadn't seen in weeks, a vulnerability, an emotional openness he had closed off since they discovered the truth about their relationship. "Marina, I need to tell you something." "What?" "Regardless of what happens today, regardless of the outcome of all this, I can no longer pretend I don't feel anything for you. Marina Steele's heart pounded. Raphael, let me finish. I know our situation is impossible. I know we are siblings, that it would be wrong, that society would never accept it. But I also know that what I feel for you is not just physical attraction or emotional confusion. He moved closer to her on the sofa, taking her hands. You are brave, integral, strong. You made me want to be a better person. And even knowing that we can't be together romantically, I want you to know that you mean more to me than anyone else in this world. Tears streamed down Marina Steele's face. I feel that too. Since that first night at the cafe, there's been something between us that I've never felt with anyone. And we'll never be able to fully explore that. No. They remained silent, holding hands, sharing the pain of an impossible love. But we can be family, Raphael said finally. We can support each other, protect each other, be present in each other's lives. It may not be what our hearts want, but it's more than many people have. Marina Steele nodded, knowing he was right. So we're family? We're family. At 2 in the afternoon, Marina Steele, Raphael, Dr. Ferris, and Dr. Anna Beatrice headed to the Federal Police Building. They had organized a press conference for 4 o'clock, where all the documentation would be made public. What they didn't expect was to find Edward Miller and a team of lawyers already waiting at the entrance. Raphael, Edward said with a cold smile, what a surprise to find you here. Edward, I imagine you're also here to cooperate with the investigations. Actually, I'm here to present evidence that Ms. Steele committed corporate fraud and theft of confidential information. Marina Steele felt her stomach drop. That's a lie. Is it? Edward opened a folder and displayed a series of documents. Then why are your diplomas and work references falsified? Why are there no records of your existence before the age of 20? Raphael looked at the documents, then at Marina Steele. She could see the confusion in his eyes. Marina, I can explain, she said desperately. Yes, some of my documents are inaccurate. But that's because I grew up in orphanages, because I didn't have proper records, not because I'm a criminal. Or, because you're an industrial spy, Edward said triumphantly. Sent to infiltrate our company and steal trade secrets. That's ridiculous, Raphael exploded. You're trying to divert attention from the real crimes. What crimes? The only crimes I see here are hers. Edward turned to the detectives who had arrived. Detective Smith, I believe you have enough evidence to arrest Ms. Steele. Marina Steele looked around and realized they were surrounded. Edward had orchestrated everything perfectly, turning her from a witness into a criminal. It was then that a feminine voice echoed behind them. What a pathetic scene. Everyone turned to see Eleanor Sterling Beaumont approaching, elegant as ever, but with a look of determination Marina Steele had never seen. Eleanor! Raphael seemed surprised to see his mother there. Hello, dear. Edward. She nodded coldly at the financial director. I imagine you weren't expecting to see me here. Mrs. Sterling, I don't understand. Of course you don't understand. Men like you never understand when they underestimate a woman. Eleanor opened her own folder. Especially when that woman has kept evidence of your crimes for 15 years. Edward's expression changed completely. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the secret accounts you and Alexander maintained in the Cayman Islands. I'm talking about the fraudulent contracts with shell companies. I'm talking about the bribes to public officials. Eleanor smiled coldly. I'm talking about everything you did, Edward, in minute detail, with your signature on every document. Edward paled. You can't prove anything. Oh, but I can, because unlike my late husband, I always believed in having a backup plan. Eleanor handed her folder to Detective Smith. You will find there sufficient evidence to arrest Edward Miller, Charles Rivers, Ferdinand Stone, and a dozen more criminals who have parasitized my family for decades. The detective opened the folder and quickly leafed through the documents. His expression became grave. Mr. Edward Miller, you are under arrest for money laundering, tax fraud, and criminal conspiracy. What followed was chaos. Edward shouted about falsification of evidence as he was handcuffed. His lawyers tried to prevent the arrest, but Eleanor's documents were irrefutable. Marina Steele looked at Raphael and saw relief and gratitude in his eyes. "How did you get all this?" he asked his mother. "Your father was many things, Raphael, but stupid he was not. He knew that men like Edward were dangerous, so he kept evidence against them. When he died, he left everything to me, along with instructions on when to use it." "And when was that time?" Eleanor looked at Marina Steele, then at Raphael. "When you two were ready to clear our family name and start over." The press conference went ahead as planned, but now it was Edward and his associates who were in the headlines. Marina Steele was quickly cleared of any suspicion, and Teknova began the process of recovering the stolen funds. 3 months later, Marina Steele was in her new office, a small but sunny room on the 15th floor, where she now worked as a special compliance consultant. Raphael had offered her a higher position, but she preferred something that allowed her to contribute without drawing too much attention. The company had changed completely. Under Raphael's new management, Teknova had become a model of transparency and corporate responsibility. He had donated a large part of his inheritance to charities, keeping only enough to rebuild the businesses ethically. Marina Steele had also changed. With Eleanor's help, she had finally obtained proper documents and a solid identity. She had moved into her own apartment, small but cozy, and, for the first time in her life, she felt she had a place in the world. Her relationship with Raphael had evolved into something precious and unique. They were family in the true sense of the word. They supported each other, protected each other, shared joys and concerns. The initial romantic attraction had transformed into a deep and lasting fraternal love. They had lunch together once a week, always at the same cafe where they had met. It was a ritual they both cherished, a time to talk about work, life, dreams and fears without the formalities of the corporate environment. It was during one of these lunches that Raphael asked a question that surprised Marina Steele. "Do you still think about having a family? Kids, a husband, a normal life?" Marina Steele smiled, stirring sugar into her cappuccino. "I do, and you? Do you think about getting married, having children?" "Lately, yes." Raphael hesitated. "Actually, I met someone." Marina Steele felt a pang of something that might have been jealousy in another life, but which was now just fraternal protectiveness. "Tell me." "Her name is Isabel. She's a doctor, works with underprivileged children. I met her at one of the charity events the company sponsors. And she's intelligent, funny, kind. She's not impressed by money or social status. She treats me like Raphael, not like the CEO." Marina Steele smiled genuinely. "She sounds perfect." "It's scary how perfect it seems," Raphael admitted. "Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I deserve someone like that, after everything that happened." "You deserve to be happy, Raphael, more than anyone I know." "And you? No suitors?" Marina Steele blushed slightly. "Actually, I also met someone." It was Raphael's turn to lean in, interested. "Details." "Luke." "Our Luke from the office?" "Our ex-Luke. He left Teknova last month to work at a startup. He said he wanted to get away from the bad memories." "And how did that turn into romance?" "He visited me several times in the hospital when I was recovering from all that stress. He brought flowers, magazines, talked about anything to distract me. One day I realized I was looking forward to seeing him, not just as a friend." Raphael smiled. "And does he know how you feel?" "He went out with me last weekend. Nothing official yet, but..." Marina Steele smiled. "There are possibilities. I'm happy for you." They remained silent for a moment, each thinking about how their lives had changed. "Marina," Raphael said finally, "may I ask you a serious question?" "Always." "Do you ever regret it? Discovering who your father was? Meddling with those files? Everything that happened?" Marina Steele thought carefully before answering. "No, never. Because even with all the pain, all the confusion, all the complication, I found you. I found a family. I found my place in the world. Even knowing that we can never... Even so, what we have is special, Raphael. It's different from what we imagined at first. But it's real and it's ours. Raphael nodded, his eyes shining. Family. Family. 2 years later, Marina Steele was helping Raphael choose a tie for his wedding to Isabel. They were in his apartment, and she could hear the movement of guests arriving in the garden below. "The blue or the silver?" he asked, more nervous than she had ever seen him. "The blue. It matches your eyes." "I'm afraid I'm doing the wrong thing," he confessed. "Why?" "What if I can't be a good husband? What if my genetics, what if I end up like my father?" Marina Steele held his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "You are not your father, Raphael. You never were, you never will be. You are kind, integral, capable of true love. Isabel is a lucky woman." "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for saving my company, for saving my soul, for being my family. Thank you, for giving me a home." The ceremony was beautiful, held in the gardens of the house Raphael had bought, a house large enough to welcome the family he planned to build, but simple enough to remember where he had come from. Eleanor cried throughout the wedding, both from joy and relief at seeing her son finally happy. Marina Steele was the maid of honor, and Luke was one of the groomsmen. They had married 6 months earlier, in a small, intimate ceremony, and now Marina Steele wore her wedding ring with pride. During the reception, she watched Raphael dancing with Isabel and felt a completeness she had never experienced. It wasn't the ending she had imagined when she called that stranger darling in a cafe 2 years earlier, but it was perfect in its own way. "Thinking about what?" Luke asked, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "How strange fate is," Marina Steele said, accepting the glass. "Sometimes it gives us exactly what we need, even if it's not what we thought we wanted. Deep philosophy for a wedding party." Marina Steele laughed, watching Raphael give an emotional speech about finding true love after searching in the wrong place for so long. His eyes met hers across the room, and he smiled, a genuine, happy smile, free from the shadows of the past. "It's not philosophy," she said to Luke. "It's gratitude." Later that night, after the newlyweds had left, for their honeymoon and the guests had departed, Marina Steele and Luke helped Eleanor organize the house. "Marina, dear," the older woman said, "may I speak with you for a moment?" They sat in the garden under the lights that still glowed from the party. "I wanted to give you something," Eleanor said, taking an envelope from her pocket. Marina Steele opened it and found a deed for the house where Raphael's father had met her mother in Rochester. "I can't accept this," Marina Steele said. "Yes, you can. I bought it last year and renovated it. It's furnished, ready to be lived in. I thought perhaps you and Luke might want a place to spend weekends, or perhaps start a family when you're ready." Marina Steele looked at the deed, then at Eleanor. "Why?" "Because that house was where your mother was happy, however briefly. It deserves to be a home where her daughter can also be happy." Tears streamed down Marina Steele's face. "Thank you for everything." "No, dear, thank you for forgiving a foolish woman and giving her a chance to be family." 5 years later, Marina Steele was sitting in the garden of the house in Rochester, watching her 2-year-old daughter play with the building blocks that Uncle Raphael had brought on his last visit. Luke was in the kitchen preparing Sunday lunch, humming softly. Life had settled into a sweet, predictable rhythm. Marina Steele now ran her own compliance consultancy, helping companies establish ethical practices. Raphael and Isabel had 1-year-old twins, and the 2 families visited regularly. Eleanor had moved into a smaller house near Raphael's, where she helped care for her grandchildren with the dedication of a loving grandmother. The phone rang, and Marina Steele saw Raphael's name on the screen. "Hi, brother." "Hi, sister. How are things there?" "Quiet. Sophia is trying to build a castle bigger than herself, and Luke is experimenting with a new recipe that's going to kill us with cholesterol." Raphael laughed. "Perfect. And work?" "Good. I closed contracts with 2 more companies this week. It seems the demand for ethical consulting only increases." "I wonder why," Raphael said dryly. They talked for a few more minutes about everyday things, the babies, the weather, plans for the holiday. It was the kind of common conversation between siblings, full of small details and casual affection. When they hung up, Marina Steele watched her daughter play and thought about how she had arrived at this point. all the winding paths, all the losses and discoveries, all the pains and joys that had brought her to this moment of peace. "Mommy?" Sophia looked at her with big, curious eyes. "Yes, love? Why are you crying?" Marina Steele touched her face and realized she was indeed crying, tears of pure gratitude. "Because I'm happy, Princess. Very happy." Sophia nodded as if that were perfectly logical and went back to playing. Luke appeared at the kitchen door, a floral apron tied around his waist. "Lunch is almost ready, and before you ask, yes, it includes vegetables. You know me too well." "It's a husband's job," he said, kissing her forehead. "And it's easy when you love someone so much." That afternoon, while Sophia napped and Luke read on the sofa, Marina Steele went to the small office where she kept her memories. In a special drawer, there was a photo album that began with a single image. She and Raphael on the day of the public revelation of Teknova's crimes, both exhausted but determined. The following pages told the story of how two lost people had found not only a family but a purpose. There were photos of weddings, births, birthday parties, Sunday lunches. A gallery of ordinary moments that formed an extraordinary life. On the last page, there was a letter she had written to her daughter, to be read when Sophia was older. The letter told the whole story, about casual encounters that change destinies, about families that form in the most unexpected ways, about how sometimes love manifests in forms we never imagine. "Dear Sophia," the letter ended, "I hope that when you read this you understand that there are no coincidences in life, only encounters that were destined to happen. Your Uncle Raphael and I met when we both needed family. He taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but doing the right thing even when you are afraid. I hope I taught him that it is never too late to start over. And together, we learned that family is not just blood. It is choice, it is love, it is being present in important moments, and in everyday ones too." Marina Steele closed the album and looked out the window. The sun was setting over the fields around the city, painting the sky golden pink. Somewhere in New York City, Raphael was probably bathing the twins while Isabel prepared dinner. Eleanor was perhaps reading to her grandchildren. Luke would soon wake from his nap and suggest a walk before sunset. Everything was exactly as it should be, and when Sophia woke up, Marina Steele would tell her the story of how sometimes accidentally calling a stranger "darling" can be the best mistake one makes in life. Because that's how she found her brother, her family, and finally, her home.